$4 billion project in Singapore, integrated resort, 2 years of planning. Everything was detailed. And then as soon as we got to site, every single thing had changed. We literally had to throw the drawings away and start again.
Put that coffee down.
Creators are leaders. Be careful what kind of leaders you're producing here.
Helen, we're both in sales.
Let me tell you why I suck as a salesman.
They realized that to be in power, you didn't need guns or money or even numbers. You just needed the will to do what the other guy wouldn't.
I'm not leaving. The show goes on.
Well, hello there, friend. Welcome back to the Construction Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Bradley Hartman. I'm excited to bring to you today my conversation with Mr. Ben Breen of the Project Management Institute. Ben is the Global Director for Construction, and he got his early education at Victoria University in Australia. Do they have a mascot? I know you're wondering that. Yes, they do. The Victoria University Vultures. That's right. As you think about this, there's not a whole lot of scavengers that are mascots at certain places. And if you think of them, you got raccoons and hyenas and jackals and piranhas. Not great. They're unusual selections, but you do got the leopard, okay? You got a wolf, you got a coyote. So you got some scavengers in there, but anyway, I digress. Vultures, very interesting. I like it. Anyway, I digress. Ben cut his teeth on some major construction projects, then launched his own project management consultancy. He had over 20 years of high-profile experiences in construction and project management before joining PMI, the Project Management Institute, in 2019. And his primary role was introducing PMI's first industry-specific offering focused on construction project management. It is called the PMI-CP. I know that's a lot of letters in a row. We'll break it down. It is the Project Management Institute Construction Professional. It's the only internationally recognized certification program that offers an in-depth curriculum based on the construction industry. The PMI-CP certification promises to elevate your leadership and empower innovation and sustainability in your career. So in this conversation, we talk about leadership principles. We talk about what not to do when developing better project managers. And Ben offers some unique examples and some very specific language that you can listen to, understand, and apply immediately to become a better leader and a better manager on the projects that you are running. So, my friends, as always, thank you for listening. Please enjoy my conversation with Mr. Ben Breen, Global Director of Construction at the Project Management Institute. So, Mr. Ben Breen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Bradley. Great to be here.
Well, I'm glad you made time, and I'm also interested because you, at least as I sit here in Dallas, you are living in the future. Tell me and tell the audience, remind us where exactly you are recording from right now.
Yes, it is already tomorrow. I'm sitting in Melbourne, Australia.
Okay. Well, I appreciate this. I kind of deliberately do these podcasts kind of later in the day because, quite frankly, I'm not nearly as sharp first thing in the morning. Luckily for our audience and me, you, my friend, you wake up, you probably already got up, ran 20 miles, and you're already in the second half of your day. So appreciate you making time. Maybe let's just jump in. I'm always curious when we talk to experts like yourself. What led you into this? What ignited your passion in construction in our industry?
Sure. Well, look, as we talked about, I grew up in Australia. I haven't always lived there, and I'll get into that. But I grew up in Australia, and when I was young, really my dream was to drive a Mack truck all the way around Australia. And I realized that wasn't really going to get me to where I needed to get to. I started then having some other interests, and that was in architecture and construction. And in high school, I did an internship at a small architectural firm. And I was absolutely fascinated by how you could draw a few lines on a piece of paper, and that would turn into an actual building. So that really sparked the interest for me. And I went on to do structural engineering and moved to Singapore in the mid-90s because there was just such a big construction boom going on. So I've been privileged to be in the right place at the right time, and I've worked mostly throughout the Asia Pacific region on some pretty amazing construction projects.
Wow. How big of a difference was it with what you grew up learning in Australia and then you witnessed in construction in general in Singapore?
It is very different. The way you run projects, the language that you use, the different cultures that are involved in delivering projects is different between the two. Not necessarily better or worse, but it's just something you need to be aware of and adjust to. You can see pretty quickly how to get things done. And I would almost say that wherever you are, what country you're in, you work out the path of least resistance and become effective at what you do.
So maybe let's dive in here a little bit. Are there leadership principles that you have kind of seen and developed firsthand, or maybe learned from mentors that wherever, whether it's Australia, whether it's Singapore, that are also consistent with what is taught at PMI, that you would say is when we think about leadership in our industry, thinking about building strong teams, collaborating well, overcoming cultures, where does your mind gravitate towards first when we think about those kind of key leadership principles?
Yeah, I think that first of all, you have to find what's important to you. You know, what are the principles that work for you? Yes, they are well defined. Yes, you can learn them, etc. And that's all really important, but it's still up to the individual to find their own style. For me, I'd say it's very important to have a good foundation of knowledge, and that level of foundation now, I'd say, has become par for the course. That's expected. I think there's a lot of other ways that you need to develop as an individual that can lift you above that. Certainly one of those is learning from great people. So surrounding yourself with people who are able to achieve consistently and over a long period of time, because those people will rub off on you. And I'd certainly say that for years, I've had some really strong mentors that have helped me in doing that. And it's interesting, you might read things like stakeholder management. This is a project management principle that we talk about a lot. And it's one that I think is clearly one of the most important when you are delivering a project. And it's interesting, though, that it's not just about the technical capability. And an example of that is that I was running a project called the Suntec Convention Centre. So it was a large development in Singapore. I had the most technically competent project director running the project. He knew everything that was going on, when every nut and bolt was going to be installed on site. So you couldn't fault him from that point of view. But he really didn't have the people skills. He didn't understand what made people tick. And to be able to combine that with good stakeholder knowledge is something that's really important. So we ended up making the tough decision to take that person off the project. We replaced him with somebody that was less technically capable, but had the right skill sets, people skills and empathy and things like that. And the project just changed around overnight. So I think that's finding your own little niche, having the tools in your backpack to lead well, to listen to others and grow your own style. I think all of those are very important.
Well, I know that's such a challenging decision to make, and not one that you want to make lightly. Without going into too much detail, for leaders that are listening that might be wondering, as they listen to you speak about that situation, they might be immediately thinking about Project X with person Y, and we kind of know that we probably need to make a change here, but we haven't decided yet. Maybe just kind of take that to that leadership role and put ourselves in that mindset. Can you take us through a little bit of how you end up making that decision at that point in time to make that change.
Yeah, I think it's very important to be flexible so that you may well have a plan that you believe is the best for the situation, but things change. And I'll give you another example. I did the Marina Bay Sands project, which is a $4 billion project in Singapore, an integrated resort. And we had 2 years of planning to get ready for installing these works on the project. And we did so much of the design. We had a very detailed risk management plan. We had all of the stakeholders involved. Everything was detailed again down to the smallest possible detail. And then as soon as we got to site, every single thing had changed. So it was a shock. We literally had to throw the drawings away and start again. And I believe that if you have the right, I was the project director. I had to really guide the team. First of all, make sure that they didn't panic. Just because things had changed, that's okay. We've done the risk management. We know what some of the alternative ways of getting things done are. For example, we had designers on standby, both within our team and with the client, and we were able to very quickly change the drawings, get approval, go through a process that allowed us to keep moving forward. So I think it's very much, yes, plan, that's important, but be aware that things are going to change. And if you have a very flexible mindset in being able to change quickly and move in the direction that you need to, then I think that's a fantastic skill to have.
One thing we hear often with young talent, either that is still in the university setting or maybe has been on the job site for 3 to 5 years, is on one hand, technical capabilities never been stronger. However, some of more of what we hear often, the soft skills, you mentioned empathy, listening skills, interpersonal communication, are often lacking. To what degree, in your experience and the trainings that's offered at PMI, to what degree can we accelerate that? Or is there an element that young people, they're immature, they just haven't lived enough to pick up some of these skills? How do you think about those two things?
I think the first thing is that I wouldn't have used the word empathy in construction even as little as 5 years ago. So things are changing. My kids are telling me this all the time. Come on, Dad, keep up with the times. So look, there's no doubt that these soft skills, or PMI likes to call them power skills, because that's actually what they are. Things like empathy, critical thinking, communication skills, all these things that were perhaps taught as a secondary thing are now absolutely critical in the way that we work. So I love that there is this focus on these types of skills now, because I think if you can combine that together with the technical skills, then you're going to be in a really strong place. And organizations, I think, that are able to give you the training and the right mindset in that way, and providing things like support groups and upskill training groups, all of these things have become really important. And the companies that are focusing on that are actually better at delivering projects. So it's proven statistically that it'll help you, with success of the projects you're working on.
Well, I think you said something, and I'll use this word very deliberately, powerful, is that just changing out the adjective soft for power, which is very much about power dynamics and how we develop trust and how we create resonance with each other. The minute you said that, I'm like, yes, of course, soft skills is terrible branding. Like, what's soft? Jello and pillows and a bunch of other things that, tough construction people don't like. But I think as soon as you talk about those as power skills, I think moving forward, Ben, if nothing else, I'm going to take that, I'm going to run with it. I may or may not give you and PMI credit, but power skills is what I'm using for moving forward here. I love that. And that's a great answer. Let me ask you, as you just kind of think about just developing better project managers, is there kind of a short list of maybe what not to do that might really help our audience just think about, okay, am I potentially slipping on some poorly placed banana peels that are in the middle of the sidewalk when it comes to developing PMs that we can avoid as we kind of continue on our journey?
Look, I think there is. There are a lot of those banana skins all over the place that do get in the way, slip people up. I think that for me, what's important is don't dictate to others what they should do. So, and by that, I mean, by all means, educate them, give them the right skills, give them your experience, but that doesn't mean it's going to resonate for them. It's not their experience. So don't specifically tell them what to do. You can empower them. You can especially let them learn from their mistakes and sort of guide them on how to not make those mistakes in future. Because I can guarantee you that if it's their decision and they see that it's a mistake, they will not do that again. And I learned that fairly early on with a manager that was, I thought, too hands off. It was like, why isn't he telling me what to do? But he was very much there for me. If there was something that I needed to speak to him about, he was there. He was also there after the fact. If there was something that didn't work out well, he wasn't saying, I told you so. He was there to say, well, how else could have we done this to get a better result? So that's become a part of my leadership style as well, because it really empowers the team to get better results.
I love that phrase of just, hey, looking backwards, how else could we have done that? How could we have potentially expanded our options or looked at different alternatives to, in theory, understand that we have better options or different options in the future? Ben, is there anything else? Is there any sort of language, or maybe it's a question, or any form of encouragement where you could say, hey, this is a phrase like that phrase of, hey, how could we have approached this differently or increased our options? Anything else come to mind in just your leadership journey that you share a lot to maybe folks working with you or other mentors shared with you? Because sometimes we'll hear these things and we'll hear a listener say, man, that one guy, Ben, he said this one phrase. And I'm like, what one phrase? And it's just something that is so natural and normal to you changes lives for anybody else. So I'm just curious if anything comes to mind along those lines.
It's not so much a phrase for me, but there's one thing as a leader. So I used to run my own project management consultancy. That's where I worked at Marina Bay Sands. And I was used to being very much involved in the detail of everything that was going on. And I then joined an interior design and build company. So they used to build offices for Facebook and LinkedIn and others around the world. And what I found is that I was the managing director of this company, but I was trying to get too much into the details. I was in the weeds, getting involved in everything. And the founder of the company came up to me and said, Ben, you need to be sitting here at 30,000 feet. You need to have an overview of what's going on and see what's coming in future. That's your job. But at the same time, she said, the other skill is to be able to zoom in when you know there is a problem, and it's got to be a big problem, not the small stuff, and get your hands dirty, get in there, solve the problem, and then quickly move back up to 30,000 feet. And to me, that's something that I've used for a number of years as a leader. I think it helps you to look at the vision, not get caught up in the day-to-day activities, and therefore still be able to achieve the end goal. So no, it's not a short phrase, but it's definitely a philosophy that I follow.
Well, what I like about that is that verb, zoom. It indicates that this should be happening with a certain amount of acceleration, and guilty as charged. I will stay at 30,000 feet and then something will catch my attention and I zoom down there quickly, but I do not zoom back out with any expediency. I hang around there and annoy people forever. And then finally, like, you need to go. And I'm like, you guys got this? I'm like, yeah, we had this a week ago. Like, zoom away. So I think that was a helpful answer, at least for me, is that you're right. That's skill. And I can only imagine it's as much art as science of being able to zoom in and zoom out and know how to do that and when to do it. And my guess is a big part of that, Ben, and maybe just elaborate just a little bit more, is surrounding yourself with people and have strong enough relationships where they can be candid and say, hey, this is one of these times we talked about, Ben, you got to zoom back up there, or I think it's time for you to opt in. What have you learned about building strong teams where they are comfortable speaking candid truth to those in positions of authority and power?
Yeah, it's such an important part of what we do. And I've seen both in extremes. And I think it's about enabling a place where people feel comfortable and are willing to tell you what they think. And as a leader, it's important to be friendly with the people that you're working with. And by that, I just mean being able to have other conversations slightly outside of what's going on in the day-to-day work field, but at the same time, understand what each other's role is and respect that. And I find if you do that and you make it very, very clear that people should be raising things up to you when they see an issue, then it works well. And it's not something you say, it's your behaviors. So if somebody gives you some feedback and you get all defensive and say, well, that's not true, it's not going to last very long. So it's important to be open to change the way that you work, to listen to people, and to have that sort of collaborative relationship.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a little bit about the role of PMI in the construction industry and some of the work you're doing. And when I was thinking about this, I was flashing back to early in my career. I had just recently I had the title of project manager, and I was very proud of it and very excited of what that meant. And I met someone who they were not in construction, a completely different field where project manager meant something else. And they said, oh, are you PMP certified? And I said, I'm sorry, what? And they're like, are you certified? I'm like, certified in what? And they're like, certified in project management. I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's me, maybe it's the industry, but I'm in construction. I didn't even know you could get certified in that. And he looked at me like I was a jackass. And I was just fascinated to learn. From that point, I started digging and trying to think about how can I improve myself and what I do. So maybe go into a little bit about PMI's role in the construction industry and how you help develop better leaders and better managers in construction.
Yeah, sure. In fact, if you look back more than 50 years ago when PMI was founded, one of the founders was from the construction industry. His name was Eric Jennett. He was from Brown and Root in Houston, actually. And, there was a focus because the construction industry needed to have some system, some process, some, effective way to deliver successfully. And over the years, obviously PMP, as you mentioned, has been our largest and most important certification. We've had up to 80,000 people who are PMPs working in the construction industry. So that was when I joined PMI over 5 years ago. That was one of the things that I really noticed. And some of those project managers would say, look, the PMP is fantastic. Is there something more specific to the construction industry that PMI can develop as well? So we started looking at that about 4 years ago. And first of all, we looked into the efficiency or the inefficiency of the industry. We wanted to understand what was going on. There were some really incredible numbers that came out of our Pulse of the Profession survey, so that for every $1 billion spent in construction, there's over $127 million wasted. So it's a huge number. And if we can just become more efficient at what we're doing, then it will make a significant difference on the efficiency. It'll make a big impact on the planet. If you look at the sustainability elements of projects and the wastage involved. So PMI, our role by talking to people in the industry and by working with them closely was to develop an industry-specific certification. So it's called the PMI Construction Professional, or the PMI-CP. And it's really there to make the industry more efficient, more sustainable, and to help people deliver better projects. So that's been my baby. I've been focusing on that for several years now. It's all been rolled out to people around the world, and we're getting some wonderful feedback, which is heartwarming.
I can imagine. And anytime you build something like this, I can only imagine the weight of someone who grew up in the industry and knows how valuable it could be to rise up to meet those expectations. For anyone that is listening now, that's thinking, it's interesting, I may or may not be aware of that. What's an immediate next step they can take, Ben, to learn a little bit more about the PMI-CP, AKA your baby? How can they learn more about that to help advance their career?
Look, there's a couple of ways. Obviously, they can jump on the PMI.org website and search for the construction certification. That's certainly a great way because there's a lot of resources in there to help them understand exactly what does the course do, but more importantly, how will it help them in their day-to-day running of projects, regardless of what level. We've deliberately built this so that it's from someone, let's say about 3 years of construction experience and above, all the way through to very experienced project managers or project professionals in construction. The other way is that PMI has an amazing network of volunteers around the world. So you can generally go into any major city and find a PMI chapter. And so that chapter, for example, PMI Melbourne chapter in my backyard, you can go in there, you can meet great people, you can network with them, and you can ask them questions about the various courses, whether it's PMP or CP or many of the other courses that we have. And it's not just about learning about that, but it's about then networking with those people, learning from others. Hopefully you will be able to impart your skills, knowledge, and experience on them as well. So that community plays an enormous part of the DNA of PMI.
I'm not sure I was familiar with that, but immediately my mind just goes thinking to some of the experiences that I've had that was learning. But once you put that community around it, I often found I learned a lot from those people as well. They gave context to maybe some aspects of what we were learning or what I was doing in my job. So I think that just takes it to another dimension that allows you to understand that. I think we know this all through the globe, certainly here, obviously for most of our listeners in the United States, this is all about relationships and learning from each other and growing your network and finding people that can help you and you can help them and grow in your career. So I love that fact. And I'm assuming it's probably very intuitive, Ben. If we go to the website, we can find where the different chapters are in cities throughout the world.
Yes, you can. That's right. There's 300 different chapters that we have around the world. So yes, you can look at a website, or you can just do a general Google search for PMI chapter near me, or specifically in the city that you're in, and it'll come up.
Wonderful. Well, hey, I know this may or may not have been originally coming out hot on a Friday morning to start your day. I'm still trying to wrap up Thursday evening. I feel like I've got a more pleasurable next few hours than you do, but I don't know what's on your plate. So I've really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks for making time. And again, we will put links to everything that we talked about in the show notes to make that as easy as possible. So Mr. Ben Breen, thank you for your time.
Bradley, it's been a pleasure. My Friday is quite busy, but this is a good way to start the day. So thank you for that.
All right, then, friends, how did that go? Hopefully you enjoyed my conversation with Mr. Ben Breen. Head over to PMI.org. Take a look. They have a lot of these certifications and training that can really help you advance your career. And thanks again for Ben for waking up very early in the future to join the podcast. I really enjoyed that conversation. And if you did as well, feel free to share this with your network. They're looking for smart people to listen to like Ben with the limited time and attention that they have. So please share this as you see fit. And if you get a minute, please rate and review us on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. That means more to us than you know as we strive to grow our audience and bring our construction community closer together. All right, I'm done. Closing out like we always do. You, my friend, are owed nothing. Deliver value first. Make it a great week.